Hey there! Hope you have been doing well and that you have had a great day. I'm going to share with you today some important information about store atmospherics. And I'm going to look at how these store atmospherics should help you guide your pop up store's design and the conception of your future project. The information that I'm going to share at first are related to academic content related to atmospheric design, either for a physical store or an online store. And then we are going to translate this content in the pop-up retail context. So I'm going to share with you this content and then we will focus on pop-up stores and pop-up retailing. Remember that thinking of your pop-up store and your pop-up store's design should always be guided by your brand and your brand's identity. And it has to be defined by your brand's positioning and should relate to your target audience. These are the most important things that you should keep in mind every time you conceive a pop-up store's interior or you design your pop-up store's atmosphere. So let's do this. The store atmosphere can be studied at different levels of aggregations. An elementary level can help us examine how the individual environmental elements, such as music, noise, color, or smell, or furnishings, can be developed in order to create an interesting store's atmosphere. At a more aggregate level, we call it the factor level. We can study these elements in groups. So, for example, we can study the environment, its ambient level. We can study the environment at a design level. And we can, most importantly, study the environment at a social level. It means that the environment is composed or is comprised of important elements that should be kept in mind in order to give greater value to a pop-up store's project, or in order for it to give you help you reach actually the objectives that you want to throughout the pop-up store's duration. Remember, these are three important factors: social, design, and ambient factors. And remember that these factors were defined by an author who is called Baker. So Baker defined these three levels and he helps us understand a pop-up store's environment better, since we are going to conceive this environment based on important environmental factors that initially come from a traditional store's design. So, therefore, Baker proposed a generalized list of atmospheric dimensions, and these dimensions relate to the service industry. We need to pay attention to the importance of the service industry when it comes to pop-up stores and pop-up retail, as we are purely included in these types of industries. The services industries and everything that relates to services pays a lot of attention on atmospheric design and the importance of atmospherics in developing better or experiential effects at the customer level. The classification brings together the atmospheric elements at the point of sales in these three categories. For example, when we talk about the ambient factors, we are looking at the smell, the color, the odors, the music, and so on. Whereas when we look at design factors, we are more thinking of the store's accessibility, the layouting, the displaying, and so on. And finally, when we are talking about the social factors, we are rather looking at the team members, the employees, and the interaction between both. I'm going to explain those in a minute. So, several studies have been adopting Baker's atmospheres and atmospheric dimensions, and they have made reference to these three environmental factors in order to design better or enhanced store environments. So, I need to highlight on an important thing that the factor, whether ambient, design, and social, is comprised or involves underlying characteristics. Let me go in detail and explain about these characteristics as they are very important for your pop-up store's conception. Remember that we conceive pop-up stores or we conceive pop-up store atmospheres because our initial aim is to create a certain excitement at the customer level, or we want to or we hope to develop a certain emotion or behavioral or intentional reaction from our customer. So think of that and then conceive your design accordingly. The ambient factor underlines conditions which tend to have important impacts on our customer's subconscious. That is to say, below his immediate consciousness or awareness. And this is key in designing your pop-up store. The characteristics of the ambient factor represents lighting, perfume or odor, music, temperature, noise, or smells. These are crucial to creating an environment in which the customer would engage in and feel well, but is not consciously aware of, directly aware of. The characteristics of the design factor, on the other hand, suggest that there are stimuli that exist in the foreground of the customer's awareness. So now, at this level, at the design level, the customer would be more aware of his existence inside the store and the directions or the engagements that he's going to do in that store. Let us break down these factors into two. First, the functional and the aesthetic dimension. So the pop-up store should be always conceived into these dimensions because we want the customer to feel good. We want him to be able to interact and build or co-create his experience in store, but we want him to do that in a beautiful setup or a well-designed setup. Although the atmosphere is commonly used to describe rather intangible aspects of the store's environment, the store design is normally applied to describe mostly the tangible elements that are included in the interior's atmosphere, which are the aisles, the chairs, the hallways, the entrances, the exits. All of these elements are designed in a service environment in order to help the customer get greater engagement and help him plan his trip inside the store in a better way, or in a way that make him feel that he owns the space or he appropriates the space. This is key today in designing pop-up stores atmosphere or any type of atmosphere, because if we want to engage the customer, or if we are thinking in terms of experiential marketing and experiential feelings at the level of our consumers, if we want them to get that extra excitement, that extra feeling of happiness when visiting our pop-up store, we have to present the environment for him, and it has to be well prepared in order for him to do these types of engagements. So we move now to the social factor. We have explained previously the importance of the social factor when it comes to any service or retail service design, and most importantly in pop-up stores. Engagement is key to the success of the pop-up store, because it is through that engagement that the customer will feel that he's belonging to the brand's event, he is belonging to the brand's tribe, and he is belonging to the brand story. He takes part of that story actually, and the pop-up store helps him realize this, or makes this feeling more realistic and physical and helps him exchange with the brand at a closer level. This closeness, this interaction also is also very useful to the brand, as the brand will collect that viable hot data from the customer, types of information that generally does not have access to through traditional statistical tools or data collection tools. Social factors so represent the human component of the pop-up store's atmosphere, and they are divided into two dimensions: the customer and the staff or the personnel. And if there is no connection or interaction between these two dimensions, something will be broken, and the connection that you were hoping, the sparkle that you were hoping to create through your pop-up store's atmospheric design will not take place. So be very careful and do not miss that important thing, because you don't want to miss your opportunity of creating that little sparkle or little engagement during your pop-up store's limited period of time. This dimension underlines the presence and the efficiency of the staff or the sellers or the team members in the point of sale, and this efficiency will also exhibit excellence in front of the customer, something that we look at when visiting a pop-up store. So by that I would have explained the three dimensions that Baker developed and present, and many researchers used, and therefore many professionals followed when designing their pop-up stores. I would add on that Bittner's conception related to atmospheric design. If you have noticed that I have been talking about three-dimensional factors that are internal to the pop-up store. However, in previous episodes, we also developed some content related to the pop-up store's design from the inside out. With this researcher, we develop pop-up stores not only in terms of conceiving their interiors, but also from the exterior, because coming into the store is as important as living inside the store. We have also talked about the importance of popping up in a location haphazardly to the customer, and suddenly we see that the pop-up store joins in a commercial street or shopping mall or a location. And therefore, if the storefront or the exterior of the pop-up store is not exciting, the customer will not feel the urge of coming into the store. So you have to make sure that you create the opportunities from the outside as well as you do from the inside. So the research that have been created by Bittner also looked at the effects of the environmental stimuli that can be held on the individual and how they influence emotional, cognitive, and psychological reactions of customers as well as employees. But I need to highlight an important thing related to that researcher, and it is called servicescapes. Servicescapes are all types of retail outlets that handle service industries. This is very important because servicescapes are the heart of any retailer's project, as they consider a store from the inside and the outside. So they measure a store's inside related to the ambient conditions, but also look at the design's functionality, and they pay a lot of attention on signs, symbols, and artifacts. So I invite you to do a little comparison between the mere design of ambient design and social factors, and adding on that everything that creates meaning to the customer. Remember how the customer always looks at little details inside the store in order to make his shopping trip or his visit more engaging, or to extract better sense from his visit. So in addition to designing your pop-up store, you have to think of these ambient conditions that relate to what has been explained earlier, but it has to be conceived this times in a way that greatly affect the customer's five senses. Remember that we are looking at designing in an experiential marketing era, and we are looking at generating greater customer emotion and engagement than before, because the customer is bored. The customer has seen it all. Today, when he comes to a retail outlet or engages with a brand, he wants to see something new, something personal, something that moves him in a way that other brands or other retailers couldn't do. Spatial functionality includes layout, includes equipment, and includes furniture. Think now how you can bring more life into these layouts and furnitures. We have spoken in several episodes about the importance of injecting technological items or point of sale material that bring your pop-up store space to life. So these are called layout indices that have the ability to facilitate the customer's shopping goals and shopping experiences. Whether the customer is looking to develop a hedonic or a utilitarian shopping experience, you have to design your pop-up space accordingly. These signs offer both explicit and implicit cues. Remember at first when I evoked the importance of the things that should be designed for the customer in a way that he sees or he does not? It's very important to stimulate and trigger the subconscious of our customer through injecting these stimuli or these cues or these environmental variables throughout the pop-up store or the pop-up store's atmosphere. Okay, what can we withdraw from this? We have shared a lot. I'm waving to you all. Thank you for joining. Okay, so what can we withdraw from this? What can we withdraw from the importance of conceiving our atmospherics design and how can we make our pop-up store more lively? Pop-up stores need to be conceived not only from the inside but from the outside to the inside. Don't forget that the design does not have to be stuck inside the shell of the pop-up store's format. It has to be aligned with every activity that you do. Every activity that you do relating to your brand and to your brand's identity and to your brand's physical elements. Everything that has to do with communications, communication material or any physical element, and plus everything that has to do to conceiving your pop-up store's environment based on the important three factors: ambient, design, and social, and adding to that the artifacts, the signs, and the symbols. This is from the inside, and we don't forget the importance of our storefront and the outside of the pop-up store. The pop-up store's design has to be coherent or congruent with the brand's identity, and this I will repeat forever because everything that you have to do with your brand has to be fit with the brand's identity, and by this we mean congruent to the brand's identity. By design, we think of engagement because our pop-up store's design has to engage the target audience. If there is no engagement, I think that the purpose of the pop-up store would be less important, and maybe the objectives that we hope to reach will not be reached as efficiently and effectively as we thought it would. Don't forget that our customers perceive our pop-up store's atmosphere or the pop-up store in general in a holistic way. Think of Gestalt. Pop-up stores have to be designed in order for the customer to perceive them holistically and in order for them to be able to create value to the pop-up store's visit. Therefore, the customer has to make sense of every element that you have presented to him in order to think and feel that they are aligned with your pop-up store. Before I conclude, I think we have a little question here that I'm going to answer. And please feel free to ask me whatever you want. If a brand is related to nature, would it be a good idea to have an exterior setup? If so, what elements have to be taken in consideration? Yes, so I think the brand's identity relates to a brand that has to do with nature. If you want to develop a pop-up store, you have to develop it, of course, as we have explained, based on the brand's identity. And the choice of the design elements will be related to your brand's identity. Now, if you are choosing to pop in a physical location, such as a boutique, you might as well benefit from your store's front, the window, and the exterior, as well as the interior. If you decide to take it to the next level and you want your customer to really live the nature, maybe you should create a natural setup or a habitat for your customer to engage with the story of the brand from the inside and the outside. You can either go and bring natural plants and maybe some wood material depending on your brand. I do not know about your brand, but maybe evoke some things related to nature. And therefore, you have to build your pop-up store's environment for the customer to engage with not only the product, but the story behind the product. If you are talking about nature, sometimes the brand relates to a certain country or a certain zone. If this zone has specificities and you want to relate or show to your customer or your target audience, might as well think of reflecting them physically in that pop-up store, including leaves, flowers, maybe some insects that's relating to your brand identity, or maybe to the nature that you want to highlight in that pop-up store. I don't know if I have answered your question. And if you are thinking of designing a pop-up store, I would always invite you to think of the budgets, because sometimes you have the idea, but you might not be able to execute this idea because it might cost you a lot of money. So please do your math before jumping into your pop-up store's realization, as sometimes along the way you might reach halfway with the project and would not be able to continue with that, because you have to think of everything that relates to technological elements, the POS, the merchandise, the cost of the merchandise. All of these you have to also include in your pop-up store, and they would cost important amounts of money that you should consider before. So thank you. So if we don't have other questions, I would like to thank you for joining me tonight. And I would invite you to consult to previous episodes on ephemeral retailing that have been posted on this Instagram page, as well on the YouTube page. And you can have access to all of the content that has been shared already on topics related to pop-up stores design and atmospherics. And more on this topic will be shared very soon with experts. Please stay tuned to the page and get access to all of the detail, the live chats, and all the information that I have been sharing on the topic lately. And I would invite you to meet me on Saturday at 7 p.m. GMT +1 for an interview with PopUp United to talk about the brand, about the projects that the brand has been doing, and about the importance of pop-up stores in the services industry. And I wish you all a great evening and hope to see you soon on Saturday and other live sessions to chit-chat more about pop-up stores and their importance today in the retail world.